Alright, here's the Ride-Rite air springs. Install on a 85 F350. I got half the kit here. It's a big upper bracket, some spacers, the lower bracket, bag of hardware, the air springs themselves. Here's the truck. It's the 85 F350 crew cab diesel. Here's the assembly kind of together, and here's what we're looking at for the rear. It's pretty easy install, it looks like. What I did is I measured the axle to the ground, jacked it up, took the wheel off, put some jack stands so that the axle's at the same level, the same height from the ground as it was resting on the tires with no load in the bed. It looks like what I'm gonna do is have the 1-inch spacer in the front side and the 1/2-inch spacer in the back, because that levels the bracket out pretty good. It looks like we're a little low on the right side, but I don't think it's gonna bother anything to have it, you know, up just a little bit, like right there. It seems like there's a lot of adjustability in the airbag itself, as it's just like a flexible membrane. You wouldn't want to overextend it, I'm sure, but I think it'll be fine. So that's what I'm going to do, just kind of square everything up. I'm probably going to completely attach the bottom piece, just so that I make sure everything's good. Get all the, and you put the spacer you're not using on the bottom there, so you can clamp around the leaf springs. And I'll probably completely fix the bottom, get everything all lined up, and then mark the holes. And you can just take off this top piece to drill your holes into the frame. Make sure there's nothing behind there. And we'll see what it looks like in a couple minutes. So this side's done. There's no pressure in the airbag yet, but I've got it all installed, bolted down, the carriage bolts trimmed. The hardest part is drilling these 4 3/8 holes through the frame, 2 on each side. There, 4 on each side of the vehicle, 2 on each side of the assembly. As you can see, it looks pretty good. It's actually like fairly not noticeable that it's even installed because of the tires are so big. I guess if you had smaller tires, you might notice. Let's check out the other side. I'm in the middle of this one. Right here, I just drilled these 2 3/8-inch holes, and the passenger side of the frame, you don't have to worry about there being any wiring or fuel lines or anything on that side for this 85 F350. Definitely verify that on your vehicle before you start drilling. And this side has a fuel line which goes to the rear tank, and I think there's brake lines up there too that feed both sides of the tires. And I think there's some electrical bundle too that goes to like the trailer hitch and the lights at the back. So there's a lot of stuff behind the seat channel frame. What I did is just put a little 2x4 block behind there, and I had to push out these 2 retainer clip kind of holes for the wiring and hoses that are back there. So just use a punch to push those out. You can get the 2x4 block behind there and then drill your 2 holes on this side. I just use this 3-in-1 oil, just a nice little cutting oil for keeping your drill bit lubricated, and go really slow. If you go fast and you're generating a lot of heat, you're just going to roast your drill bit, and it's going to get dull, and you're going to spend money on more bits or get real frustrated trying to drill a hole with a dull bit. So I did the 4 holes on that side, of the 2 holes here, and my drill bit's still pretty sharp, just because I've gone slow and plenty of oil. Yeah, the other thing you have to do is trim off these carriage bolts, or carriage bolts, I think they're called. So I cut those off with an angle grinder once they're installed here to make sure the length is correct. Just leave like a 1/2 inch or something like that underneath to help you get it assembled if you ever need to take it out again. So that's kind of what I did. And one other thing that I noticed that was different from the instructions is that this bracket can go on 2 different ways. It can go on with this, you can see there's a little lip on the other side. Hopefully you can can see that. Yeah, you can see that little flange bent down. You can put that on the inside or the outside of the vehicle, depending on which truck you have. And I think it said GMC trucks for a certain year should have that on the inside, and everything else should have it on the outside. And I actually mistakenly put it on the inside on the first side I did, and it all goes together fine. It all fits fine. So the hole that goes through the center of the airbag is like right up against the corner here. So if you switch sides, then the airbag's center hole that this bolt goes inside might be a little bit more centered in the slot on the top, but it looks like it's lined up really well on the other side. So I figured I'd do this side the same as I did the other to keep it consistent, and I don't think there's any problem with having that flange on the inside. So just something to keep an eye on. So here it is. Both bags are on and they're pressurized. This is 40 psi in the bags. Got a very simple one-touch connection for the air. I got the excess hose just coiled on top of the gas tank, the rear gas tank, and it's plumbed all the way to the back to these nice Schrader valves. I put one on each side of the license plate that you use to fill up the bag, and right's for the right bag, left's for the left bag. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but 40 psi really lifted the back of the truck up. There's no load in there at all right now, and we're definitely riding really high in the back now, which is probably not what you want to do if there's no load. I think they said run 5 psi in there with no load, and then level the truck with using more air, sufficiently to level the truck when you load it down. So we'll see what happens when we get the camper on there. I got a 11-foot Lance camper that's going to go on the back, or that has been on the back, and the bags will make it easier or nicer to cruise around with that, hopefully. And then I'm going to do a 3-foot hitch extension off the back with my motorcycle that weighs, I don't know, 300 pounds or something like that. So I've towed with the camper plenty, and it does fine. There's a lot of body sway, and you can tell the suspension's really sagging. The sides of the truck, actually, the fender gets maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches from the wheel, so it sags by quite a bit. So it'll be nice to have the bags now to keep it level and be able to tow boats and the hitch extension with the motorcycle carrier on the back. So one of the more intricate parts of this install is measuring your spacing of your brackets to make sure you get that right. And what you want to do is measure, according to the instruction, the top of the surface to the top of this surface right here. And you want to keep that between 5 and 6.5 inches. And that's without the bags inflated. So I had this one at about 5 3/4, I think it was. Let's see, no, it was something like that. I think it was like right at 6 or something like that. And so you can see we're about 7 now, which is about 1 inch higher. So we grew about 1 inch with no load and 40 psi in the bags, which is kind of interesting. So I was just going to go for a drive with 40 psi, see what it feels like, but then drop those down to about 5 for cruising around with no load, and we'll see what happens with the camper in the back. So yeah, that's another thing you want to do when you're putting this on before you center punch those holes, is make sure that you're square. So from this corner to here is the same distance as this corner to here, so you got everything nice and square with the frame. Okay, we got the truck on, or the camper on the truck. This is a LC 780 Lance. It's 11.3 feet long. Weighs about 3,300 pounds dry, I believe. And there is the truck with it on. So if you look at the gaps between the front and the back wheel wells, it does look a little bit saggy in the back, but it's hard to tell, to be honest, what actual level is. So we got 37 inches, and we were at 40 and a half to this part. 40 and a half to this part before the camper was on. So we sank by quite a bit. I think it was 40 and a half, yeah, 40 and a half. So that's 3.5 inches of sag. So let's give it some air. This is with 0 pounds in the bags. Okay, now to give it air, there's a Schrader valve on the back. So let's see, we need to come over here to the compressor, turn Alright, so that's 50 psi. Looks like it came up quite a bit. Let's see what we got. So that we're at 37 3/4 now. So that got us 3/4 of an inch. Not sure what's good or bad. We'll see how it rides. Alright, so I spent a while looking at this instruction manual for the springs, and there's this cool table on the back. The problem is, though, that the part number listed here is nowhere on the Amazon listing for the product or on the box, and then there's this style referenced part number style that is nowhere on the Amazon listing or on the box. So it's kind of confusing, but from the style, graphic of the airbags, you can see the double convoluted design is the one that I bought, or the one that came from my truck. And on the Amazon listing, it says that the rating for that for the weight rating for this airbag is, I think it was between 2,000 and 5,000 pounds. So if you look at the max load at 100 psi per pair of bags, the 5,000 rating is this 6401, which is also 6873 and 6859 double convoluted 224C style. And so yeah, that's interesting. So then it says 5 to 500 psi is the working range. But then in this manual, let's see, on page here it is. This is page, they don't even have the pages numbered on this, but it's at the check the air system step, and at the last step of the install it says, as a general rule, the air helper springs will support approximately 40 pounds of load for each psi of inflation per pair. For example, 50 psi of inflation pressure will support a load of 2,000 pounds. So then if we know that the maximum pressure of this system is 100 psi, then that's a maximum load carrying capacity of 4,000 pounds, not 5,000 pounds, which the table said. So it did say as a general rule, so maybe that's supposed to be just general. Anyway, I think I'm going to go maybe 90 pounds or maybe even 100, because the camper's 3,300 dry, and then I got 45 gallons of water, food, a bunch of other stuff, bottles of propane, and two two 7-pound, no, not 7 pounds, they're like 25-pound or something, bottles of propane in there. So it's definitely really close to the maximum weight rating of the bags. So the instructions are a little bit bullshit, but whatever. I never usually read them anyways. So visually speaking, it looks like the gap in the front, from the tire to the wheel well, is much closer to the back now that we've raised this guy up with 50 psi. I'm going to go up to 100 and just see what that does, if it makes it look even better. But according to general math for this and the instructions, it looks like I should be running these at around 100 psi anyway. So let's see what that does. 37 3/4. Alright, so we're going to start filling these up here. We got, let's see, where are they going up? That's 60 there. Woo. Really going up. It's 90 and 90. Looks pretty good. Alright, well, here we are in the Stanislaus National Forest, and we got the airbags on, giving them their inaugural tour test, and we got the camper on the back, which is the heaviest thing that I have right now that I can test the bags out with. We got 90 psi in the back, and they actually look a little overinflated. As you can see, the clearance on the back is a little bit bigger than the front, but like I said, 90 psi, about 4,000 pounds, a little bit over, maybe 4,250 or something like that, pounds in the back of the truck. And the biggest thing I noticed carrying this particular load, the camper, is that the clearance between the bumper on the camper and the ground is much larger because the back of the truck is not squatting so much. So that's been really huge for us on this trip, because of the clearances, and we've been going to some kind of remote locations. This isn't very remote at all, but it is a dirt road. It's not very rough, but we went down some pretty rough dirt roads with little tiny short rock garden. Had no worries about dragging the camper or anything on that. So with the airbags, it's been pretty good. I like them. They're definitely make the sway a lot better for the truck while you're driving on the freeway, and kind of switching directions. It really helps with that. You can see that my air hose is wired. I wired it to the back bumper where the license plate is, right in there. And after I did that and put the camper on, I realized that now to inflate or deflate them with the camper on, I have to crawl underneath there to do it. So if I were to do it again, I probably would have put the air hoses in the wheel well and just made it super short run. Or maybe come up with something else, a little bracket that comes out around here, something like that. Long-term solution would probably be to have onboard air and just control it from the inside the cab. But yeah, super happy with them. I think they really do increase the weight carrying capacity of the truck. Well, technically it doesn't, but in practice it sure does, and it makes the truck a lot safer and handle the weight a lot better when it's going down the road. So that might be the end of the video, not sure. I think the next step for me is to do a hitch extension and then get my motorcycle on the back or tow a boat. So I might put that in this video, I might save it for later, not sure. Hey guys, so this is probably 6 months later after installing the airbags. I went on my initial trip to check them out. I thought they worked great, and then I was actually editing the video to put up on YouTube and noticed this deflection on this lower part of the bracket. You can probably see right there. There's a little bit of bend happening. And this was only like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3, probably 300 miles of driving with the camper on the back of the truck, which I'll have to look at my records. I did actually go over the scales on the way out of town, so I know exactly how much I weighed. I think it was like 4,000 pounds. It wasn't, I wasn't at 5,000 pounds, which was the max weight rating for this airbag setup. So I had noticed that bend there at like 4,000 pounds of load and got really worried about it. Well, not really worried about it, but moderately worried about it. Basically pissed off. Called the company twice. No one ever called me back. I'm noticing that the top bracket has these 2 flanges, which are really nice, that anybody who has an appreciation for mechanics, I guess, would understand that bending those corners up like that just dramatically strengthens this bracket. And there's a flange in the back. You can kind of see it right there on the back of this lower bracket, but there's none in the front, and it's just the front that's starting to sag there. Again, it was like 200 or 300 miles of driving with 4,000 pounds at the back of the truck. So what we're gonna do is pull these off and weld on, basically weld on a flange on the front to fix this. I guess straighten it out first and then weld the flange onto the front. The company won't call me back, so I'm just gonna take care of this myself. I know how to fix it, but I'm just disappointed in this product because it's rated for 5,000 pounds and I'm seeing it failing it when I've only loaded it to 4,000 pounds. So here we go. All right, here it is. Here it is, fully sanded down. I'm gonna put one cross member in here and then one here. So basically just like this, one here close to that bolt hole and then one here. Should be super strong. Weld it all the way around to the sides. That'll make it much stronger. Looks pretty good. So we'll do that on the outside, just like that. And we'll do one on the center too. There's that piece. So before I weld those in, I'm gonna see if I can take that slight bend out of there. Not much, but let's see if we can take it out.
Right settings on it?
Yep, except for the power. If you're using too much power, that could be why. But I didn't change anything else besides that power setting. Okay, so I'm just fitting this together. I want to make sure that this bolt can get all the way in the corner there. And I need to leave a little bit of a room for the weld radius to be in the corner. So something like that. Weld in this one first, both sides, and then get that guy on the outside. Okay, there's that, tacked on pretty well. Guess it's more than tacked, but pretty straight, ready to weld that the rest of the way in. Alright, there's that one. Weld it all the way around. Still pretty hot. It's super strong now. We'll put that outside piece on, flange on, and it's going to be super strong. Alright, it's done. All the sides welded. It's pretty hot. All the insides welded. This thing is super strong. Now I gotta go cool, paint it, and put it back in the truck. Alright, there's the bracket. It's getting dark out, so I got my headlamp on. But I finished up the welds and put a coat of paint on it. I only had white, so it's gonna look a little funny under here, but should be good. Well, I think I'll need 2 hands to get it in there. Alright, that one's all bolted down. I got the Loctite on the bolts again, and you can see the 2 supports there. Looking pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. I hope I'm sure it's gonna be way stronger, way better. Can't imagine there being any deflection off of that now. And the top bracket already has these 2 ends bent up there, as you can see. Sorry it's so dark. But yeah, I think the top bracket's good. Bottom bracket's pretty solid now, so time to put the tire back on. Alright, here's the other side. It's all together and welded. Didn't record any of that. Painted, and it's going back in right now. Alright, while I'm at it, I figured I'd double down. I got the front 84 to 04 airbag kit for the F350s and 250s. I guess it's kit number 2223. And this is the same as, or I guess it's the equivalent kit from the back for the front. Which with I think probably a little bit of modification should fit on my 85 F350. So I got the front tire on the passenger side off, and the airbags kind of mounted up here, or mocked up here. And it's definitely no holes on this truck match up with what the mounting points on this bracket are. So we have this lower bracket, which kind of, it's got this little flange on the back that cups the, what do you call that, U-bolt that holds the axle on, I guess. And it sits on top of the leaf spring. From what I saw on the previous brackets bending, I'll probably weld in some supports here so that this doesn't bend down. Seems to be kind of a shitty design by the manufacturer. This bracket is a lot thinner gauge than the rear one. And the bags are smaller and meant to carry less weight, so I guess that makes sense. But I probably will weld in something there to stiffen that up. And I don't know, I'll think about it for this top one. But what I did is measured this bottom bracket sitting on the leaf spring, and then from this bracket to this bracket should be between 5 and 5.5 inches, I think it was. So I measured that out, and I got some spacers to put in here just to hold this for the measuring. And then I center punched some of these holes. So now that that's done, I also loosened this guy just to wiggle it around to see what fit looked good. I think I didn't actually need to remove that. So if you're doing this yourself, you can leave this bracket in. But I got my holes, 4 holes center punched there. Let's go ahead and drill them. So here's those 4 holes drilled, 1, 2, 3, 4. I got the bolts in the top just to let it hang here. And before I even drilled those holes, I noticed this kind of tight clearance issue between the frame and the bag right here. It's, I don't know, a little bit more than a quarter. I guess it's somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch. I don't know. I can't put my finger in there, so it's kind of tight. One thing I'm thinking is when these bags air up, they're kind of flat and pancakey, so this edge might be drawn in when they air up, as well as, you know, generally pushing the frame away from the leaf spring to add more space there. So I think before I make the decision of adding spacers here, I'm going to air it up and see what it looks like. And keeping in mind, you know, when the vehicle sways side to side, I want to make super sure that the frame will never touch the bag, because if it does, that can be a wear point and the bags won't last as long as they could if there was no chafage there. So also, you know, the more spacers I put in here, the more the center line of the bag gets pushed away from the middle of the spring, the leaf spring, which is unideal from a handling perspective, and I guess a weight carrying capacity perspective too. So I'll probably bolt it all together and air it up and see what that gap looks like when the bag's aired up, and make the decision at that point if I want to add spacers here or not. All right, I got 30 PSI in there and too close for comfort. Definitely want more clearance than that, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the spacer back there. 1/4 inch, maybe. We'll probably start with a 1/4 inch, see how that looks. That'd be easy to just slap some of that flat bar behind there. 1 by 1/4, I think it is, and see what that does. All right, here's the driver's side, and I got it all mocked up. This side had a bunch of oil on it for some reason, like caked up over the years. Maybe it's because that power steering pump is right there and that was leaking, I'm not sure. But I scraped most of it off the frame on this side and then leveled out the bag so it's 5 inches between the two brackets, just like the other side. The manual says 5 to 5.5, and I put the other side at 5, so I'm gonna mirror this one. And center punched the holes, and now I'm ready to drill. I think I didn't mention on the other side, but there's a starter on the other side behind this frame member, so make sure you're not shorting out the battery terminals that go to the starter over there when you're drilling. And then on this side there's a bunch of fuel lines, it looks like, that go like there's like a manifold right here on the inside of the frame member, so make sure you're not drilling through that when you go and drill your holes. All right, so the challenge now is how to support this span, because it's sitting on the truck. It's a bad example, I guess, but it's sitting on the truck like that. So there's a big span on a thin piece of metal, which I guess Firestone never thought about being a problem. And if this bracket is anything like the bracket for the rear, then it's going to bend and yeah, cause problems, I guess. I don't know if that's debatable or not, but anyway, I cut these 2x2 box tube or square tube. That's a 1/4 inch wall, and what I'm thinking is that I'll just weld it in there and cut. I guess I'll cut there and there, so it's just a V, and weld it in there, because the truck's frame, or not the frame, I guess the leaf spring is coming across basically right there. So if I have, yeah, that's a good representation because it's up against this edge and going straight across. So the bolt's basically on the edge of the leaf spring. So if I do this V, I'll be able to get my wrench in there to undo that bolt, which would be important. And it's a little bit tall still, you can see it. The leaf spring is going to be resting on this surface and this surface, so I'll need to machine it down a little bit. So we'll see how that works. Alright, so I cut that piece in half and I ground it down with the bench grinder so that this straight edge going over top of it just clears. I'm out of gas for the TIG welder, unfortunately, so I think I'm going to try to stick this real quick. Just grind off the surface for the ground and then try to weld it on with a stick welder. Well, here's my first ever attempt at stick welding, just a couple passes there. On this one I realized that my foot pedal was still plugged in, so it wasn't giving it the proper amount of amperage. So here's the final-ish product. It definitely leaves a lot to be desired from the beauty aspect. I mean, that obviously is not going to fall off. It's on there pretty tight. But TIG welding is a lot more controllable in my mind, and I'll definitely be sticking to that if I get the chance. I guess stick is really good for penetration, I hear. I definitely don't like the spatter. I don't like the uncontrollable kind of nature of it. I like having all the different aspects of welding separated between your appendages. So you have like the heat control on the foot, you got the rod in one hand and the arc on the other hand for your TIGging. So it just gives you a lot of control over what you're doing. But that works. I mean, that's definitely not falling off. So I'll just hit it with some paint and be ready to go. Alright, these are done. I found some black spray paint and they look pretty good. Let's slap them on. Cool. It's all buttoned down for 70 psi in it right now just to see how it looks. I'm gonna go ahead and throw the tires on and then see how the ride height looks. Alright, well here we are at the furthest point of the test run. This is driving like 900 miles or so to the Grand Canyon in Arizona, and I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you should be able to see that. So the brackets look super straight, and that's what I was expecting. I added a lot of steel underneath that lower one, so I wasn't expecting it to move on me at all. And the front ones, here they are. I did that brace in the middle of the bottom bracket, and it looks pretty solid still. No change. I'm not convinced I noticed much of a difference with the front bracket in the ride quality. It might be a little bit more springy, a little bit more airbag feeling, but it did raise the front up quite a bit when I blew that bag up. I think we're running like 40 psi in the front and 90 in the back right now. So the bags in the front were primarily for bumper build and motorcycle carrier in the front later down the road, but I figured they'd also maybe do something with the camper. Yeah, this is December in Grand Canyon Mather Campground, and we got some snow yesterday, kind of midday, and first come first serve for Mather, and plenty of spots right now. No one wants to camp in the winter unless they have a RV with a generator. So that's it. So we'll drive back and see how they do on the way home. Okay, so I'm back from the test run, and everything worked pretty well, I think. Let's check out the brackets. So here's the driver's side rear airbag. You can see there's no visible deflection on the corner there that we were noticing drooping. So that looks pretty good. Here we are on the passenger side. Same deal, no visible drooping on that outside corner. Looks good. Here is the passenger side front airbag. You can see that there's no drooping in the bracket. It's still got this little V that I added in the middle. It does look like the bag is sitting a little bit lopsided. I'm not really sure why. The top looks pretty symmetric there, but the bottom looks like it's a little bit more pushed down on that side than on that side. So I don't know if that's just how the bag is made. Somehow it kind of sits differently, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, or if the way it's constrained in the brackets there, but it looks like there's no deflection in the bracket itself on the bottom. So I'll keep an eye on it, but I think functionally, hopefully it's okay. It looks like the brackets aren't bending at all and they're staying in place and supporting the bag correctly. And here's the front bag on the driver's side, and it looks like it's got a little bit of the same anomaly as the passenger side, but on this one it's the top that looks a little non-symmetric and the bottom that looks better. So it looks like it's kind of open here on the left and a tighter interface on the right, which is kind of strange. But again, it looks like the bracket itself is not yielding. You can see there's my little VI installed, which is supporting the weight of the airbag pretty well, it looks like. So I think I'm going to stop this video here. Kind of a mixed bag when it comes to, like, am I satisfied with these bags or not? I don't like spending money on something and then having to modify it right out of the gate like that. Like, pretty obviously they're lower brackets on the rear bags, and most likely on the front bags are not thick enough to support the weight that the bags can, the forces that the bags can produce. So I'm not really happy about the brackets, but the airbags themselves and the, I guess, bolts, all the fasteners were grade 8, which was nice. And the carriage bolts I don't think were grade 8, but the ones that mattered on the top were grade 8, the ones that were in substantial shear. So that was good, and the airlines and the quick connects were nice, and the little fittings that you can screw into the cab, or the whatever piece of sheet metal or body panel or whatever you want to install the little quick connects on, are nice quality. So I don't know, I guess I probably would buy these again just because I'm not aware of there being any other options for this truck. So I guess I would just go with it again if I were to do it again and make the modifications in the beginning. I think I'll cut this video now because it's pretty long, and maybe sometime in the future we'll do a revisit video and maybe add some onboard air. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching.